Hello, this is Mark Mitchell from Whizard Strategy. Welcome to my latest webinar on how to sell architects. I hope you're going to get a lot out of this, and so let's get started. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Mark Mitchell. I'm a building material sales and marketing consultant. I work with building material companies to help them overcome barriers to their sales growth. I'm the author of the book Building Materials Channel Marketing, and I'm the co-author of a newer book, How to Be a Building Industry Sales Rainmaker, that I co-authored with Carlos Quintero from Sales Effectiveness. And so that's, hopefully you've read both books, I hope. I live in Boulder, Colorado, with my wife, and she's a psychologist, and I'm her only patient. So she takes good care of me and makes sure that I'm on my meds. So I think we're good for today. That we'll be able to get through this. This is all about everything that I do is about selling more stuff. I'm never into theoretical things, big long-term things you should think about. It's all about how can you, first of all, today, what changes could you make today in order to grow your sales? And then what are changes that maybe are going to take a little more time, a little more commitment? But I think there's things that every one of us can do today to make a difference. So you're going to see both things. I always start out looking at a problem or the world. This is how I see the building materials industry, is graphically. And so I designed this several years ago, and it's really helped me to communicate with building material companies. And I've had this is hanging in a number of building material companies. I walk into companies, and I mailed this to them several years ago, and there it is hanging in the conference room. And I'll have the CEO say, Mark, before this, when I hired somebody new to this industry, it took them a year. And then they'd walk into my office and go, I got it. I finally understand this business. And with this graphic, I now can very quickly explain to somebody how this industry works. So I encourage you to do the same thing when you have new employees, to pull this out. There's also a residential version, and kind of walk them through so it gives them a visual view of what's going on. And in your particular product, maybe it's a little different than this. So take out a magic marker and change it. But we're going to talk today about how to go in there, how to grow building material sales through the architect. And you're going to see there's a couple of areas here on my graphic where there's, if you go to the key down toward the bottom there, and you go up above, you see the word general contractor. And that's the process that we follow if we're selling design build that we're going to talk about. And then if you go down below the key and over to the right, you'll see that there's the traditional way of what's called architectural specification selling. And so we're going to walk through all of these today, but I just wanted to have a roadmap in front of us that we all made sure that we're seeing the same thing. Now, what we're not going to talk about today is things like how to use Dodge better. We're not going to talk about how to use BIM. We're going to talk about how to turn architects into customers who prefer doing business with you. There are many companies that go to Dodge and identify a big project like the roof on McCormick Place here, and they spend all their time going after that roof. But so is everybody else. And by the time someone finally gets the order, they've probably had to cut their price so far that they might not even make any money. So I'm not a big fan of that. Now, if you're very good at that, then keep doing it. I'm not here to teach you how to do that better. I'm here to give you some different viewpoint about how to approach your architectural sales. And one of the things to keep in mind is, I always have fun with this, that I think there's too many old white guys in our industry, and I'm technically an old white guy, even though I try to not act like one. And anybody who knows me well would tell you that I'm not an old white guy. But old white guy is an attitude. I know 30-year-old women that act like an old white guy. And I know men, women, and people of all races that act like an old white guy. An old white guy means they're stuck in their ways. They know best. They've been doing it long enough that there's no reason to change. And as we all know, the world is changing so fast that you've got to have the energy and the interest and the curiosity to keep up with all of those changes. And old white guys tend to not. One of the things also to keep in mind is when I point things out, maybe your company is doing this right, or maybe your company can change this, but I guarantee you most of your competitors are not. So there's a good chance that you have a lot of competitors that are led by old white guys who are stuck. And so as soon as you are not acting like an old white guy, you will go right past these people. I'm also a contrarian. So whatever somebody's doing, then I want to do the opposite. Or I want to look and say, how can I change the game and tilt the playing field in my favor? Years ago, when mutual funds first started, there was a mutual fund called the Magellan Fund, and it was led by a man named Peter Lynch. And for years, he outperformed every other mutual fund. And he wrote a book after he retired. He wrote a book called One Up on Wall Street. And he talked about how all the other stock analysts for the other funds, they sat all day in front of their computer screens looking at numbers and graphs and charts and so forth. And they were looking at either what has happened or what happened yesterday versus what's going to happen tomorrow. And Peter spent his time out on the street, out observing people, out watching, why are all these young girls going in this new store at the mall? What is this store? Why are people wearing these kinds of clothes? Why are they buying these kinds of houses? Those are the types of things he started to notice. And then he would go do his due diligence on each of those companies. And that's where he find the companies to invest in. So I like, if everybody else is getting a Dodge report and chasing the biggest project, then I want to say, let them go do that. How can I go in a little different direction and perhaps outsmart them? Now, what I want from your viewing of this webinar is your takeaway should be, we're going to cover a lot of things, maybe too many. I have this tendency of like, yeah, but I should share this too. And is that I want you to think about, as we go through this, what are several actionable strategies that you can use right now, literally tomorrow, to grow your sales? What are some things, little things you could change, and you'd be surprised how a little thing can make a big difference. So we're going to talk about a lot of things. We're going to talk about things that affect marketing, affect sales, affect your company overall. And there's things that you're empowered, you are in control of yourself. So maybe you're an individual salesperson. Well, you can make changes whether or not your company chooses to go along. The same thing in marketing. You can start to approach marketing with a little different attitude. So don't sit back and go, well, my company's not going to improve their customer service, so there's nothing I can do. So we're going to talk about a lot of things, and I want you to think about, ideally take away at least one, if maybe three things that you can do. Here's an example of a simple thing. I met with a VP of marketing of a roofing company 2 years ago at the roofing show. And they told me that they bought a copy of my book for every one of their salespeople. I can't remember, it's 12 or 20 people, something like that. But they bought a copy of my book. And then we're directed, every salesperson, you are going to read this book cover to cover. It's not that long, doesn't take that long to read. And you're going to read that book. And then for the next 2 weeks, as you call on architects, I want you to get out this book. I want you to have it with you for the next 2 weeks. And literally, when you're in the parking lot, before you walk in the architectural firm, I want you to read the chapter in this book about how to sell architects. And if you have 3 architectural calls that day, I want you to read that chapter 3 times. It's only maybe 8 pages long. It won't take you very long to read. But literally, for the next 2 weeks, before every architectural call, I want you to read that chapter again and again and again. After 2 weeks, they had a conference call and said, okay, what happened? And the salespeople reported they were amazed at how the conversations changed. Just reading this gave them, oh, maybe I could look at the architect in a different way. Maybe I have a better understanding, a different approach, a little more empathy, whatever it is, whatever they took out of there. But they were saying, we had conversations where I never would have believed the things the architect opened up and told me. The architect all of a sudden was in no hurry for me to leave. I feel like we have more of a close relationship now after taking this new approach. It isn't that you don't know what you're doing. It isn't that you don't know your product. You don't know how to call in an architect. I'm just asking you to consider maybe step back and take a little fresh approach. And I think you'll find that that's a really simple thing that can be have very powerful results. Now, when I do my workshops, people come to Boulder and for 2 days in a workshop. Many times they'll have 20 pages of notes when they leave, and they're kind of overwhelmed. And I'll check back with them 6 weeks later. Okay, what did you learn? What have you put into practice? What changes has it had effect? Is there any questions I can answer? And they'll say, I'm overwhelmed. There's so many things here. And I'm a salesperson, but I realized that we need to make changes to our website after coming and hearing you. And but of course, my website designer tells me it's none of my business. So you can start to run into these things. So I've tried to label everything as we go through this today, that I view this as something where sales should take a leadership, marketing should take leadership, or the company overall, the leader of the company is going to have to get behind some of these changes. So as we go through these, you're going to see, oh, this is something, I'm a salesperson, I could probably act on this. I should share this with my marketing person. So for example, if you're a salesperson and none of your marketing people are on this, you might even say, hey, watch this webinar. Okay, and maybe that will help them get on board with you. And that's what I always find when people come to my workshops and then they have me come to their company and I work for the day with their whole team together and they're looking across the table at each other going, yes, we should change the website. Yes, I can do that. And we're going to improve customer service and technical support, and everybody's working together and they all understand each other. So that really is very powerful. But today, I just want you to think about what can you actually accomplish. Okay? In my experience, the keys to success with architect sales are, number one, to focus. And I'm going to get into that, to focus on the type of building, the type of architect, to be the leader in knowledge, and to be the leader in service, customer service specifically. We're going to go into each of these, but I find that people, when I interview architects, they tell me they're looking for not somebody that says, oh, every building has a roof, I make roofing, so every building, as my roof is right for every building. They're looking for someone who can specifically talk about why their roof is right for this particular building. They're also looking to learn, and they can tell me that the companies that help them learn the best are ones they prefer, as well as this starts to get into kind of beyond the architect, the contractor, people like that. They will hear back, the architect will hear back, well, this company didn't ship on time, we've got a delay because of this, or there's an installation problem, and that's part of the service part to kind of, tie it all together. And architects tell me, these things are more important than the product. In other words, if your product saves 10% more energy, the focus, knowledge, leadership, and service are more important to them than saving 10% more energy. And also, it's more important than having the lowest price. So that shows you how important these things are. And when you focus on these, then all of a sudden your product does become better because your company and you become better. And it becomes less important with price because you're the company and you're the person they want to deal with. Another key thing here with architects is to educate before you sell. Whenever I interview architects at the AIA show, AIA show is one that really frustrates, or I question its value. And I say to many companies I work with, are you going to the AIA? Have you gone before? Are you sure you're going? Why are you going? What if you didn't go? What would happen? Okay. And my main problem is because of the lack of traffic on the floor and the lack of architects who are coming into the booths. And when I talk to the architects, they tell me that their view is if I step into a manufacturer's booth, they're going to immediately try to sell me their product. Okay. They're not going to sit down and say, do you understand the issues with waterproofing? Do you have any questions about waterproofing? Do you have any projects involving waterproofing? And the discussion is on that level. And then it slowly leads down. Let me show you one of our products, which I think can answer your question. But it's first, teach me before you sell me. And many companies, in their excitement and zeal, and here I am at the trade show and I'm going to go knock them dead, they don't slow down and back off a little bit. One of the good things here is that in architectural, when I look at the willingness of different people to change, I see that the architect is the most willing to change, if you will. And hang on a second here, I got the wrong picture here. Okay, the architect is the most willing person to change. And so that's a thing that you want to really think about, and that's a thing that's good. Many times you get frustrated because you see that it's hard. You feel like the architect isn't changing. He's too hard to change. But you compare that architect to somebody like a contractor, and you're going to find that they are a lot easier to change than a contractor is. So next thing I want to talk about is how building materials is changing. And so the first thing that I've noticed is a lot more disruption. In the top left corner here's Elon Musk, who invented the Tesla car, and now he's decided to go into the power generator business. What's that mean? He believes in not selling through dealers. He does many different things uniquely, and he'll probably do that in the generator business. You're going to see more people like him. On the top right is Assa Abloy, who to me is disrupting the door, hardware, and access control industry because they've gone and bought all these companies that make different products, and they're trying to pull them together. So now Assa Abloy rep can walk into an architect and say, show me the plans and I can provide everything that you need. I can work out a design, a specification, and I can quote the whole job instead of having to talk to 9 different manufacturers, one for hardware, one for access control, one for door slabs, one for roll-up doors. They're saying, just talk to me. Well, if you're one of those competitors of them and you only offer a couple of the product lines, you're now facing some real disruption, some real challenges here. In the bottom left, here's a company. It was unique. I saw it on Facebook, and it says on here, after raising $3.1 million on Kickstarter, the revolutionary shower is set to disrupt the bathroom market. Well, who are these guys? Okay. If I were Kohler or Delta, I might be going, I'd be watching these guys because you don't know what's going to happen there. On the right here, of course, is Nest, which probably really is the biggest disruptor, in which here's a guy that designed the iPod. He decides he wants to leave and start his own business. He looks around at all different kinds of industries he could go into, and he says, what's an industry that's ripe for disruption? And he realizes the building materials industry, all kinds of old white guys. There's nothing new happening here. And so he looks and says, how about the thermostat? When was the last time Honeywell or Trane or anybody had any true innovation? Been a long time. So he comes in and reinvents the thermostat. He doesn't worry about what HVAC contractors think. He doesn't worry about HVAC distributors. He sells the product at Home Depot. At an Apple store for twice the price of the best Honeywell. And so there's some more real disruption. Okay, so you want to be watching that. It's going to be coming at you. There's going to be product disruption. There's going to be distribution disruption. There's going to be installation disruption. There's going to be information disruption. So you want to always be thinking about who is going to disrupt you and how can you maybe be the disruptor? This is another big change that most building material companies have not caught on to or recognized. And that is, when I talk to architects over the last 2 years, they frequently say to me, you know, Mark, I work all day. I'm busy on job sites, meeting with clients. Maybe I actually get to do some work, meetings, phone calls. But when I go home at night, and I've had dinner, I would literally, and they use these words, I would like to sit down in my lazy boy chair in my underwear with my laptop and go back to work. And what I really wish manufacturers could help me with is I want to go to their website and I want to be able to get answers to any question I have on their website. And most manufacturers, I can get some of the answers I need, but then I have to wait till tomorrow to talk to my representative, to send an email, to call the tech service rep, whoever. And I don't understand why a building materials website can't work as well as the consumer sites that I visit. And they mentioned, I don't know what they're doing, I haven't really looked into it, but I consistently keep hearing people talk about Marvin Windows' website as being the best in terms of its ability for the architect to go in and find out anything he needs at 10 o'clock at night on in his lazy boy chair. So I would be thinking about how you can make your online presence better. The next thing in the marketing area here is your goal should be to stop printing everything. Some companies are already there, but many companies are still dragging their heels. They're still printing brochures, catalogs, data sheets, and they can't imagine not printing them. You need to start imagining not printing them. When you stop doing that, you will find that now you've freed up a lot of money to move into online. And also, these just aren't as effective today, particularly with people like architects. They're viewing that as really old school and inefficient ways of marketing. So and once again, this is a big red M there in the right corner. As a marketing person, you need to be the online leader. So your goal should be that your website is the most informative. The second is the easiest to use. If I ask an architect, tell me the best window website, I would want him to say the name of your company. That's going to take some real serious effort and time, and it's going to take working with the right web design firm and doing a lot of research with architects to find out what would make that website the one that is the go-to website for them, rather than you make assumptions about what an architect wants. The next big change that I see is continuing to happen where I've called the big get bigger. So you've got bigger architectural firms, bigger general contractors, bigger owner development firms, bigger distributors. And they're getting bigger faster than building material companies are getting bigger. And so from a sales point, what happens here is when you're bigger, you have more money to invest in your people, you have more money to invest in data, more money to invest in your website, processes, and so forth. And when I talk to particularly people like distributors, large contractors, and so forth, they tell me how, they train some of their people in how to be a better negotiator. I don't find building material companies having that on their list of things to train people for. So you're kind of walking in there naked. The next area is they have better data, access to better data, and they know how to analyze the data. And so that's another area where the building material manufacturer needs to start to think about how can I get more data centric. As they get bigger, the other thing, particularly architects, is they have a global view of sourcing. So if you tell them that you can't get something, if it's available anywhere in the world, they will find it and they will figure out how to buy it. So you need to expand your view. Many companies are quite parochial, and this is all we do, and we're not interested in meeting the needs of the architect. So this is, you find in the architectural firms, you're going to find there's no more old white guys. You're going to find, younger, smart people. You're going to find MBAs. The world of your customers is changing, and you need to keep up with it. The next thing that goes along with the bigger architectural firms is this is a global business. So you can call on an architect in New York City, and he's designing a hotel in Dubai. And so the materials are going to be purchased probably in Dubai. They want to know, can you provide materials in Dubai? Is there a contractor who can install it? And I find many times that building material companies, in calling architects, I think many times they should have a business development person and a salesperson. But many times they look and say, well, if he buys it in Dubai, then I won't get credit for it. And so all of that is, slipping through the cracks, in my opinion, and it shouldn't. So just another change in the business to be thinking about. As we all know, green is growing. And green is a lot more than we save energy or we have a recycling trash can in our cafeteria. So a couple of companies to take a look at are that, there's more, but these are just two examples. One is Assa Abloy and the other is Owens Corning. These are both companies that from the top down, there's a commitment to the environment, sustainability, green, whatever words you want to use. When I was at the Green Build show last year, I walked up to Assa Abloy and they had, and I walked up to the little podium or display there that was talking about hinges. And I walked up to the man that was standing there and I said, okay, help me. How can a hinge be green? And that's all I had to get him started. He says, well, first it starts with the quarry and the way we get the raw materials. We have more energy efficient ways of getting the raw materials out of the quarry. And then how we ship from the quarry to the plant. We've discovered ways to save this much energy. And then in the factory now, our factory uses 30% less energy this year than it has the year before. And let me show you the hinge here. It has 30% less metal in it and it's 20% stronger. And I'm like, oh my gosh, the hinge really is green. I never could have imagined that a hinge could be green. And that comes from a top-down commitment to sustainability, not just, okay, how do we make up some bullshit story about why our hinge is green? They really have a real credible story. Back to stop printing things. I've been in I've been in several architectural firms which are saying we no longer have anything printed. Everything is online. We view printed pieces of paper as being environmentally unfriendly, as being a signal to us that this company is really not green, that this company is not innovative, and this company is rather old school in how they do their marketing. So another reason to think about printing, just stop printing. I mean, I really mean, print less and less and less, but sometimes I go overboard and say, just stop it. There's also another change is the growth of multifamily. And you are in a great position to take advantage of this. All of my clients companies I work with that focus on residential, they've all woken up to multifamily and they're all like, okay, Mark, we want to go get multifamily. And I go, you don't know what you're doing. You can't have a builder sales rep call on a multifamily architect. It's not going to work. And so you're in the right position because you know how to call on these people. You know how this construction works. It just happens to be for an apartment or condos instead of for a hotel. So that's a real opportunity. And I don't see the residential people as being a threat for a while. They need to if they're going to do it, they need to hire commercial salespeople that know what they're doing, not try to get their residential builder salespeople to also call on an architect. Next big area that is big change, and this is another opportunity for you to get out ahead of your competition, and it's called marketing automation, in which it's the idea of rather than you're cold calling, knocking on doors, that people are coming to you because of what you're doing online. And this, once again, here's the architect. He is spending more time online probably than he is talking to reps or reading ads in magazines or going to trade shows. And so, once again, how important this is, your presence there, and how you engage this person and start a relationship. Here are two examples. One is in the top right there is Marvin, and I'm actually surprised they didn't do a better job here, but this is in their architect section, and if you see the little call to action there, it says see winners. Okay, well, that's going to draw an architect in. It's going to create interest. It's going to keep them on the website longer. I would have preferred some stronger calls to action. If you want to see how powerful this can be, go to a website called HubSpot.com. So here's their homepage. This is not particularly creative, kind of boring, but it has 5 calls to action on there. Okay, and it isn't saying like we have the best software, buy us. It is literally saying things like, stop interrupting, start connecting, close more deals with less work, stop cold calling, start closing. Okay, so think about, if you were your online presence was talking to architects, what would be the questions that would interest them? Is it get more business, make owners happier? I don't know what it is for your particular product, but think about, you need lots of calls to action in which the architect then clicks on something, and then you're going to offer them something like, would you like this downloaded report? And they tell you their email, and now you know them and you can start a relationship. You know what they were interested in. So take a look, just go to HubSpot, click on any one of those. They'll have some reason why to get you to give the email. Give them the email. And for the next 6 weeks, watch what happens. Watch how they keep coming back at you with different things, all designed to get you to want to engage with them. Imagine that your company had that power. Or imagine that your competition has this and you don't. Okay? So I really recommend you look into marketing automation. Now, that is a big thing. It's going to take you a year. It's a steep learning curve, a big investment in time and money, but I encourage you to look at it. Another area, I'm always looking for what's happening on the horizon. What's coming toward the building material company they should be aware of. And one of the ones that over the last, once again, 2 years that I've noticed is the growth of panelized construction in commercial construction. So on the right here, you see a building in China that was built in 57-story building built in 19 days. Now, I, probably wouldn't want to go to the 57th floor of a building built in 19 days in China, but yet it was done. Recently there was a high-rise apartment built in Brooklyn that followed the same process. Now, they didn't build it in 19 days, but they followed the same process in which maybe a mile from the building site, they found an empty building and they put a factory in that building to build bathrooms and kitchens and living rooms and bedrooms as components with all the electrical, plumbing, everything all together, and they just put it together like Legos, or if you've ever seen how a cruise ship is built. Okay, well, that's that contractor, architect, they need different things from the manufacturer than the person that's doing what we'll call traditional site build. So this is going to be growing. So I might be an early adopter and start to get curious about this and talk to some of the people and say, what are your biggest problems with a roofing supplier, or windows or whatever it is. The next growth is design build, in which I'm going to show you here. Well, you just look here. It's about 5 to 10 years ago. Every single general contractor added the word design build to their logo. Just every one of them. You cannot find a general contractor that doesn't have the word design build. Okay? But yet the manufacturers have not. There's a button on their website that says architect. There's not one that says design build or design build experts or we support design build. Now, to give you an idea of why I'm talking about this is here's a chart that shows in what happened from 1985 to 2015. in which in 1985, the traditional architectural specification process was used 80% of the time. And now it has declined, and design build is surpassing it. And now over 50% of buildings are built following design build. So there's just there's some different needs. Their probably biggest need when I've talked to design build contractors is speed. Speed for you to give me a price, and accuracy of, like, it's going to show up on the job site on this day because we're moving. And I even found where, if you have a good relationship with the general contractor, he may not go get 2 other quotes. Okay, if your price looks reasonable, he doesn't want to take the time to get 2 more quotes. So it's an interesting and big and growing area that I don't think most building material companies are paying enough attention to. And so, we talked about this before, how the design build process works versus traditional architectural selling. And, the result is, with design build, you get the building built in about a third less time. And if you think about your building, every month, or what's the cost when you don't have tenants in the building? So that's really driving this. So if salespeople are interested in design build, I would tell you, number one, go out and meet with some design build contractors. Initially, not to sell them anything. Initially, go out and meet with them with the idea about, I want to learn more about your challenges and what a manufacturer can do to help you be more successful. You want to take it a step further, there's a Design Build Industry Association. They have their own association. They have an annual small trade show. You could explore that. I wouldn't say jump in and go have a display, right away, but start to put your finger in here. Here's an example of at last year's Design Build show in Denver. Armstrong, there were about 100 companies. They tended to all have small booths. And Armstrong was the only company that I saw took the time to put the message on their booth that spoke to the design build contractor. Too many building material companies, every year they develop a 10-foot, a tabletop, or 20-foot booth, and it's the same message no matter what show you're going to. And it's so much more powerful when you do this. So if you look at the copy on there, it says finish every job on time, on budget, and on the mark. It says installs 12 times faster. It says clips and accessories overnight. And I can't tell you how many particularly contractors say to me, there's always something missing that I need, and the companies I want to deal with are the ones who are going to jump through hoops for me. So they're telling them, we're going to jump through hoops for you. Installs 3 times faster, stop cutting and painting, the answers that you need when you need them. That's another thing about how fast I'm on a job site. I need an answer right now, not someone to call me back. So those are the kind of messages that the design build industry wants to hear if this is something you think is right for your company and your product. This is another surprising thing that I just realized in the last year, and that was most companies that I work with are always talking about how long their warranties are, and either how long their warranties are, or how cheap some owners are. And I read where in the New York Times that there was a developer building some 20-story apartment buildings in Manhattan, and his whole plan was in 20 years he was going to tear them down because he viewed there would be a more valuable use for that land. Maybe he's going to put an 80-story building. So he only wants a product that's going to last 20 years. He doesn't want a 40-year product. If you think about the average fast food restaurant, they probably last no more than 10 years before they tear them down or do a major remodel because branding has changed, or someone figured out if you move the drive-up window 3 feet to the left that sales go up 5%. And so they're not looking for long-term products. And the same with strip mall developers are not looking for long-term, because they're probably not only are they going to build it and flip it, but there's a thought in the back of the mind, eventually the traffic driving down this road perhaps would demand I can sell it to a nice hotel or something. So that's another interesting thing, is to think about, shorter life of commercial buildings. Is there an opportunity for you there? And then the final one is just, I notice how the Europeans, particularly, are getting serious about North America. In the past, it's been my experience, there are some, serious European players that are committed to to North America, but there's a lot of them. You go to trade shows and you see they have a little 10-foot booth and they expect something's going to happen, and of course nothing does happen. Or they have a U.S. distributor or dealer or rep or something, and they get a few sales here and there. And they've tended in the past to look at North America and say, it's way too competitive. I can go from Germany to Dubai and much easier make a sale, or Malaysia. But now that the rest of the world for them is slowing down, now I'm seeing more of the European companies are saying, I'm going to get serious about North America. I got to figure out what I'm doing. What do I need to invest? What do I need to change? So you're going to see more European companies coming at you. The ones that are already here are going to be getting more aggressive. In the last 2 months, I've had 4 companies from Europe ask me for proposals. 2 of them have hired me. That has never happened before. The companies that I work with in the United States that are owned by European companies, the people I work with are like, Mark, we're getting pressure from Europe to grow our sales. They're really looking at North America and wondering why we aren't doing more. So you're going to see that. And then this morning, I I have this thing where I never stop improving the presentation. So I woke up this morning and I see this article in the bottom right: Becoming a BIM Leader. Russia eyes global expertise in virtual building technology. And I thought, wow. So I grabbed that and stuck it in here. But so here, here's, I don't know what this will mean to anybody, but it just shows you, I never would have thought of Russia as being in any way a competitor. I see them as a customer, a potential customer. So there's lots of things going on here involving foreign companies that are no longer just Asian companies making cheap products. Now, the most common mistakes that I see building material companies when they're talking and trying to sell commercial buildings to architects, these are the most common things that I see. And these are bigger issues. This is not something an individual salesperson or a sales team may even be able to do. All right. But every company has these silos, and it makes you tremendously less effective. And the few companies that I see that have been able to figure out how to break the silos down and keep them broken down do much better. And so you see sales and marketing not working together. Customer service is another one I hear all the time. The salesperson's out there doing a great job, and the architect, contractor, whoever will say to me, I love the salesperson, I love the company, love the product, but their customer service is so bad that, I give them less business than I would give them if they improve their customer service. And so there's just disconnects in there. So if you can in any way fix any of this in your company, I guarantee your competitors are wrestling with the same thing, and it will put you way ahead. The next one is, I talked about that disconnect there between sales and marketing. When I talk to architects about, tell me about what makes a difference in a good sales call and one that's not so good, and they'll say, well, I need sales reps. I need sales reps to keep me informed, but when I get contacted, I literally sit and say, okay, the odds of this being good are maybe 50-50. 50% of the time it will be a worthwhile sales call, and 50% of the time it will be a waste of my time. And one guy told me that he got out a little timer. It has a 2-minute timer, and he tells the sales reps to come in, you got 2 minutes to get me curious or you're out of here. And they talked about how the marketing department will develop marketing materials for the salespeople that in large part are useless. So the architect does not care that you're owned by Berkshire Hathaway. He does not care you've been in business for 100 years. He does not care you have a new plant. He doesn't care about your vision statement. He doesn't believe it. He doesn't care that you're committed to the environment. Maybe if you're an Assa Abloy and you have a really compelling story, he might, but chances are he's heard it and heard it and heard it. He doesn't care you're a nice place to work. He doesn't care that you're the leader. He doesn't care that you're innovative. That he doesn't care about those things. So the way to get past that, I find, is the marketing people should at least once a year go out and ride along with salespeople for 2 or 3 days, 2 or 3 different salespeople in 2 or 3 different cities. They should go on architectural sales calls. They should go on calls where you have a relationship. They should go on new calls. They should go out on job sites and see what's really going on. They're going to be much more prepared to do a better job of preparing materials that are going to be more valuable to the salespeople. But it takes usually it's not so much the marketing people don't want to go, but it's like people look and say, why would we do that? Why would we want to spend the money? But you should. Now, from a sales standpoint, once again, I frequently see companies saying, we have a better product. If we just communicate the benefits, architects will want it. It's just really that simple. But what really happens is we have a better product, we communicate the benefits, and the architect doesn't see the benefit. Not that he doesn't think there's a benefit, but he doesn't see the benefit outweighing the cost and hassle of change. So I always look at trying to take a product into somebody like an architect and kind of say, okay, how can I make the product benefits outweigh the cost of change, the risk of change, and the hassle of change? How can I make that help? Okay. And so I always want to be thinking along those lines. Now, I think you're all very familiar with this, but you need to have the contractor on board. I don't care how much the architect loves the product. In the vast majority of time, the contractor can go and talk the architect out of that specification. He'll work on the general contractor. He'll work on the owner. He'll work on anybody he can to talk them out of using your product. If they don't like it, they're not comfortable with it. And as we all know, contractors are stubborn like a mule. They really don't want to change. So you need to take them into account when you're looking and saying, I want to get this architect to start using our product on this type of project, and then make sure that the architect is on board with that happening. Otherwise, you're going to spend a lot of time and just lose the business in the end. Now, there's 2 secret weapons that I call them secret weapons because it's surprising me more people don't think about them. But the 2 secret weapons are customer service and knowledge. And I make a habit of every time I call on, I'm doing a ride along or interviewing an architect, a distributor, a dealer, builder, contractor, I will always ask them, tell me your top 3 companies, manufacturers, suppliers. Tell me the top 3. I'm looking for companies that you can't imagine doing business without. I'm looking for companies that if somebody came in and offered you a lower price, that probably would not sway you to change. And they can all tell me immediately those 3 companies. And I ask them, okay, what do they do? And they say, knowledge and customer service. Those are the 2 things that it's like, I got 1,000 things to worry about. And with these companies, they have my back. Okay. They have my back from a customer service standpoint, and they have my back in terms of, I got a question about anything, I will get an honest, unbiased answer from them. And that makes a huge difference. And so customer service, an easy way to think about this is maybe you will tell me, oh, Mark, we have great customer service. Let's say that it's like, like a 5-star hotel. Okay, good for you, right? I would challenge you, if you really want to do this, use this secret weapon, but you want to take it to the next level. So if you think about like the Four Seasons Hotel, the Ritz-Carlton, we might say 5-star, and all their employees have to live up to what 5-star service is, so that you feel like, wow, I paid $600 a night, that was worth it. And so a developer wanted to build a hotel in the Middle East. And I don't know who came up. I don't know if it was the architect, the developer, the hotel operator, their PR person, but they opened this hotel, and they didn't go for 5-star. They didn't go to 6. They went ahead and skipped it and went to 7-star service. And so here's the world's only 7-star hotel. Now, imagine what you have to live up to. Imagine what every employee knows when they go to work every day, what's expected of them. Imagine that your whole team, everybody interacts with your customers, felt that way. In my opinion, it doesn't cost any more money. It isn't $1 million ad campaign. It's more about an attitude. And when you do this, you become, you're bulletproof. It's really hard to get unseated because somebody comes in with a lower price when you're one of those people. So your goal should be to be one of those people, one of those companies. If you want to do this on a do-it-yourself project, low budget, here's 2 great books. One is an old book, but it's a great book, Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive by Harvey Mackay. And if you read that book and you just have your customer service people do what he says, you will dramatically improve your customer service. Another one is the Zappos book called Delivering Happiness is another one. In fact, you can even go, next time you're in Las Vegas, you should go to Zappos, and they have tours of their offices. Now, and they're free tours. They also have one you can pay something for an executive tour. But you go through their offices and you feel like, there's 400 people that must have been a cheerleader at some point in their life. You've never felt such energy, and you can't imagine how great it must be to interact with them as a customer. And so those are just a couple. There's, certainly more big-time consultants and so forth that do this, but there's just some simple steps to start you getting thinking in the right direction about how to take your customer service so that it is far and above all your competitors. It's not just as good. It's not good enough. You want to be demonstrably, noticeably different and better than your competitors. The second secret weapon is knowledge. And so here, this is something about the whole company's attitude and salespeople, but you should know more about your product category. You shouldn't than your competitors. You should know more about the types of buildings that you're going to target than your competitors. Now, there's an example of in the residential building, not architects, but residential building. There is a company called Kishler Lighting, and I've interviewed several builders, not working for Kishler, just working for other companies, and the name Kishler, like the name Marvin, comes up frequently. And I'm like, okay, what makes Kishler so unique? And they go, well, they know more about lighting in general than any other lighting company as far as the builder's concerned, and they understand what it takes from what a lighting company can do to help a builder be more successful, sell more homes quicker for more money. And they come in every year and they educate all of our people, our salespeople, marketing people, leadership, purchasing, construction management, about lighting and what's changed. And then they go in and say, you should change this model to this model to that. And the builders I talk to go, I can't imagine not using Kishler. I mean, why would I want to switch? So you can be that same type of, I'm talking about that level of knowledge that you are looked at as the go-to source, whether it's you as an individual salesperson or your company website, hopefully. So when you do this customer service and you do this knowledge, everything I see says you stand out from everybody else. I can walk in, you can walk into any architect and start asking them who their best suppliers are, who the best companies they like working with, and they can tell you. And they'll be head and shoulders above the other people in terms of what they're doing. So you should strive to do that. I think it's a very smart strategy that, once again, isn't $1 million ad campaign. So now, finally, after all this, Mark's finally going to start talking about actually how to sell architects. So I wanted to give you that other background, and now we're going to get into specifically how to sell architects. So the first thing is to stop and say, who is an architect? you know? So I look and say, they have to, every day they're making decisions about aesthetics versus performance. How does something look versus how does something perform? They're having to make trade-offs. If there's something that they want in a building, they're trying to build a building for a set budget, a certain amount of money, and they'd really like to have these expensive entry doors that are handmade in Italy or whatever they are. And they've got to find $10,000 to pay for those doors. So they're going to start looking at every other product that's in the building to see where they can downgrade the quality of something. What you want to make sure is you're not on that chopping block, that you're not an easy target for them to go, oh, well, we can always, cheapen up the roof, or the interior doors, we can get by with less expensive interior doors. The other challenge, and this is where you can help them, is because they're understaffed and overworked, they simply cut and paste specs. So whatever worked on the last building, they'll cut and paste that spec into the next building. They don't have time. They'd like to sit down and really think about, is this the right specification, the right product for this particular building in this geography, whatever every building's unique. And that's an area where you can go in and review the spec and help them make sure that they're specing the right product. Okay. Now this has gotten so bad that I was talking with a door dealer in Atlanta, and he told me about this happens so frequently that he'll get the spec of a job to quote. He'll look at the spec and go, "This is not going to work." Now I have two choices. Choice number one is I go back to the architect and explain to him that this is not going to work. He then thanks me, modifies the specification, and now myself and all my competitors now have the correct specification. But the other thing he says I'm seeing more people do is they'll go, this spec is wrong. So I'm going to really lowball this price to get the job. The minute I get the job, I'm going to walk back in and say, this spec isn't going to work. Here's the product I'm going to need to sell you, and it's this much more money. Now, that just shows you what's going on, and hopefully, a little more ethical than that, but figure out how you can be the person that helps the architect. The next thing we're going to talk a little bit more about in a minute, and that is architects, like most successful businesses, are specializing. So if you were a big hotel owner and you wanted to build a new hotel, there's probably a short list of architectural firms that you feel are qualified to design a hotel. Any architecture firm could probably technically do it, but there's ones that specialize in literally any type of construction that are known for that. And so you want to be thinking about, as I'm going to talk in a minute, what type of building does your product really work best with, and to focus on those architects. Of course, architects want continuing education units and credits, but they want to learn. They're hungry, they're curious, they really want to learn. Even if it's sitting with them for 5 minutes over coffee and there is no credit that you're giving them, but they learn something from you, they will appreciate that. As we all know, they also won't, in many cases or most cases, defend the spec. And as you'll see, as I pointed out, where 50% of buildings are now design build, they're now starting to embrace design build. So I'm now starting to see architectural firms having like a separate division, that says construction or design build. So they're also trying to embrace that, get more involved because of what's happening there. Otherwise, they're going to start losing business. So further, who are the architects? Well, there's 105,000 registered architects in the United States. There's 17,500 firms. You've got, so a whole bunch of single architects working out of their basement, all the way up to, the largest global firms with offices in every city, and, thousands of employees. One thing to keep in mind that I find people ignore, and once again, this is just a way to be different, Contrarian, is that there's 5,000 new architects per year entering the field. So that means there's probably also 5,000 retiring on the other end. And I find that building material companies want to focus on the senior or mid-level people, and they ignore the new younger people. And so I'm going, gee, if they're being ignored, maybe I'll pay a little attention to them. In my experience, in young people that have worked for me, they are the rabble rousers. They're the people that come in and say, Mark, why are you doing this? I've got a better way. We should use a different product. And so one, if you spend a little time with the new younger architects, they're going to appreciate it. They're more likely, I believe, to push change, and they're going to return that with loyalty. It's like in colleges, you see where credit card companies try to get every college student to use their credit card in the belief that for the rest of their life, they'll have a customer. And if you think also about this, if you don't pay attention to them for 5 years, it's now 25% of the architectural firm are the younger people. So think about that. Also, back to this idea about don't print and do things online. These younger people live online. That's how they communicate. And so that's further reason to keep shifting to be the online leader in your category. Now, I don't know if you've seen this chart that I developed several years ago. I developed this chart with the man at the Henry Company, David Leslie. And David and I sat down one time and just were having a conversation, and he got out a legal pad and he drew this out for me and said, you know, the problem with building material manufacturers, and he drew this out, and I thought it was quite interesting. So if we kind of go across the top, we'll see there's the owner, there's the architect, general contractor, subcontractor, the distributor, and the manufacturer in a typical commercial project. And then you take a look at the red line, and you see that is who has the most decision-making power. The black line is who has the most knowledge. And so the owner of the building can say, I would like to have Pella windows in this new building, and he probably is going to get Pella windows, right? But when you really think about it, how much does he know about windows? Okay, probably not that much. Now there are some owners that are very knowledgeable, but the point we're trying to make here is that the owner has all the power and probably the least amount of knowledge. And then you go and look at, you assign so much power to the architect and knowledge. I gave, in this instance, the architect 30% because I view the architect has to be an expert in 1,000 products, so he can't be an expert in any one. So they are looking to become more knowledgeable, and that's where you fall in. All these numbers these are just numbers, that theoretical numbers David and I put together. If I were you, I would take this and I would assign your own numbers and do the own exercise and see what you learn. So we go across, there's a general contractor, the subcontractor, the distributor, and then we end up with the manufacturer who has maybe 80% knowledge, because I view that you can't know, if you're in the window business, you know a lot, but you don't know what your competitors know. So there's always going to be a gap of knowledge, but yet you maybe only have 5% power to decide what influence what window is going to be used. So it's just an interesting exercise to get you to look at your problem from a different angle. And maybe the most important part of this is across the bottom. So it's, what is the primary motivation of each of these people? And if you look at the owner, the primary motivation of the owner, as David and I assigned it, is performance. So you can say, oh yes, he wants to save energy. That's one level of performance. He may also say, I want, performing means that my hotel has a high occupancy rate. Performance means that my hotel is more prestigious and comfortable, so I can charge more. Performance can mean my new condo development sold out faster. Performance can mean my new shopping center filled up with tenants faster and has more traffic. So you think about what performance does the owner want? Then the architect, is primary motivation is his reputation. The general contractor, the time value of money. The subcontractor, labor costs. The distributor, profit margin. And the manufacturer tends to be economies of scale. How can I keep making the same thing over and over and over again, which reduces my cost and keep selling that. And when I talk about the architect's primary motivation is his reputation, we always tend to think about, well, yes, he wants to win an award, be recognized for building a really unique, creative building. But maybe even more so in today's world, he's concerned about the negative things that could happen to his reputation. What if he was sued? What if he designed a cladding that moisture got behind and had to be torn off, or there was mold problems? These are the types of, there's the legal issue. There's also just the issue about people saying that's a dumb building. That doesn't work well, or it has these problems, even if there is no lawsuit. So that is something, so you want to keep that in mind, because human nature is you will tend to be more motivated to act by fear of what you may lose or risk than you will be by what you may gain. Okay. So, an architect could be like, gee, if I make the wrong decision, maybe I will get fewer new projects next year. Okay. That's a big motivator to them. That we want to, keep in mind as you're thinking about talking to them. The other one is I find that building material companies tend to think about, here's an architect and they have this project that I've identified, or maybe they told me about, and now I'm focusing on the project. And what they don't think about is the architect's customer is the building owner or developer or facilities manager. Okay. Now, this guy looks a little young for owning these big buildings, but I think you get the point. If you stop and also add into your equation, who is the owner, who's the architect's customer, and what do they want out of this project? And how can you help the architect not just build a better building, but how can you help him deliver on and exceed the owner's or his customer's expectations? And I find people don't step back and go, is there another angle that I could take to this in my approach? So because once again, I don't find many people thinking this way. If you do, you will stand out. And I keep harping on this, but with the architect, they want to be educated before they sell. And we talk about, I watch a lot of companies, and they go out and do lunch and learns with architectural firms, which is a great thing. But I'm really encouraged to see how they're also moving to webinars now, in which they're more cost effectively reaching many more architects. And just like in a lunch and learn, they are getting the architect's contact information. And so I'm finding that, this is a much more effective way to educate and teach people. So now the next area I talked about in the beginning was the importance of focus. Okay. So step one, and this is, I think, is a sales challenge or task, is number one is identify the types of buildings most likely to use your product. And the first step, don't think about there's a big building being built, or there's this many of this. Think about, what's the best type of building for your product, and maybe particularly for your company and its products. And think about, is it a hotel? Is it a hospital? Is it a courthouse? Is it a frozen food warehouse? What type of building is it? And you'll come up with a list of, 6 to 12 of these. And then you want to go and look at what's the projected construction activity for that type of building. So maybe you would, for example, say our product is great in shopping centers. Well, I think if you look, nobody's building any shopping centers today. So even though your product's a great fit for shopping centers, you probably want to move on to the next great type of building till you hit upon one in which there's a good amount of growth, projected activity over the next 3 to 5 years. And most of this information is publicly available. And then from there, now I know the type of building that I'm a good fit for and has construction activity. Now I want to go find the largest architectural firms that specialize in that type of building. So let's take a look. So I found on a website, and this is only 1/3 of the list, but the types of buildings that are built in commercial construction. Okay, so there's air traffic control towers, there's aquariums, there's dormitories, there's courthouses, there's auditoriums, there's classrooms. The list goes on and on. And I would tell you to go through this list and start to check off, first of all, where are you a great fit? Where is your product going to make this a better building? Okay. And you're probably going to find that you're going to start to also be able to group some of these together, like perhaps under government. Maybe half of these buildings under government are a good fit for you. And so now you've got this list of targets. But I would not want it to be too many. You decide what that is, but I might say that you have no more than 6 primary types of buildings that you have a good fit for. You can then start to develop the story. Maybe there's a page on the website about why our product is designed for hospitality. Part of your presentation when you go in is skewed toward not just we sell doors, but we're specialists in doors for hospitality, and why. Now, so let's take hospitality. So you can also, for many of these categories, so I went and found real easy, a list of the top 300 architectural firms that specialize in hospitality. So if I had a product that worked really good in hotels, this would be my target list here, these 300 architectural firms. This is who I would focus on. Because once you're in there and once they are comfortable and like using your product, there's going to be projects that come up that they just put you in. And some of them are going to be not so big that everybody in the world's chasing them, and you're just going to pick up the business. Now, some categories you might have to do a little work. Hospitality is such a big category that it was real easy to find this list. Some other types of categories, you might, there's probably not a published list of architectural firms that specialize in prison design, but I guarantee you there's probably 3 firms that are known as the prison design firms, and you could find out who those are if prisons were a great category for you. And so this is part of this idea about back in the beginning with the Dodge reports. I see people chasing projects and they never convert them into a customer. They're just, okay, I chased that project. Now I'm going to go chase the next project and the next and the next. And so they're kind of in this endless loop that isn't, to me, really, really going anywhere. So I would, rather than chase projects, I would want to convert customers. Yes, you're going to have to chase some projects, and I'm saying, if you choose to, go ahead, but always in the back of your mind, think about, okay, how can I turn this architect into a customer and not just the building into a project? Another thing I want you to think about is architects are living, breathing things, and they're changing every day. Back to our old white guy analogy, people think about, well, we got our architectural program done. That's it. Okay, go out now and start selling to architects. And I want to show you an example of what I mean by this. So earlier this week, I'm an avid consumer of information. I'm looking for things that I share with my clients. I'm constantly looking for things to share with them because they don't have time to read. And their customers don't have time to read. So anybody that says, hey, I saw this, I thought this would be helpful to you, they're like, wow, thanks for looking out for me. So here's an article that I got, I think, online from Building Design and Construction magazine. And it says, the disruptors, the millennial generation is imposing its will on design. The key line here's the subhead. Architectural engineering firms, particularly those that design hotels and offices, gain a competitive edge by knowing how to appeal to the largest share of the American workforce. Boy, if I were an architect and I were designing hotels and offices, I would certainly want to see this article and read it. And there's a good chance 9 out of 10 architects won't see this. Okay? Not that it is in front of them, they just don't have time. So when you're scouting for things like this, so I took this with one company I work with, and I sent it to them earlier this week. And I said, if I were you, if I were your rep, I would share this with architects who are focused on hospitality and offices. Okay. Literally, I could just email it to them. Thought you'd like to see. It's an opportunity to have a different type of discussion beyond here comes the door salesman. Secondly, I would develop a story with the marketing people about why, and maybe technical people about why doors are an important part of having a better hospitality experience for millennials, and why your doors are already there. Okay. I'd also develop a blog post, and all of you should have a blog based on this information, with a focus on the role of doors once again. The impression that I would want to leave is that your company is on top of market changes and is helping me, the architect, be more successful. Now, this doesn't cost, once again, any money. This just is a mindset about, I want to be curious. I'm looking for things that will help my customers. Don't assume they know, because they don't. And if you can help them, they're going to appreciate that, as well as you're going to learn maybe before them about what's changing in the marketplace. So you can become a more educated person to help them. So in summary, I want you to think about chasing customers, not projects. I want you to think about focusing on the best architects for your product, best types of buildings, and best architects for your product. I want you to have a goal of becoming the knowledge leader. Okay. It's really not that hard, once again, because most people are so focused on, here's my product, I know my product, my job is to shove my product down your throat. Okay, that when you step back a little bit and you just are more knowledgeable, and it doesn't mean you have to memorize a bunch of facts and figures. It means that you're learning, you're reading, and you have a point of view. And it's something that then you can have a discussion with the architect, as opposed to, I'm right, you're wrong, here's the facts. You want to be, this is a big marketing challenge, you want to be the online leader. Okay. Salespeople need to develop and maintain contractor relationships. You want to be on the lookout for who's going to disrupt you, and how could you be a disruptor? What could you change that would disrupt the industry? And be looking for new opportunities as you go forward. So the local reps and contractors, need to, this doesn't belong in here. Anyway, so don't be an old white guy, as I started out in the beginning, which once again is all about attitude. Be passionate about change and being ahead of the other guy. And pretend it's your first calls. I told you that story early on about the company that took my book and their salespeople and the experience they had. Pretend it's your first call, and try to think about how, I'm an anthropologist. I'm going in and there's this thing called an architect, and it's like I've discovered this tribe that has never met another human being, and I'm observing them, and just try to take yourself out of where you normally are and notice different things. And it will start a whole different type of conversation with the architect that they're not used to having with building material companies, and they will find refreshing. So I do, I'm a consultant to companies. I do research for companies. I do speaking at sales meetings and events. I hold workshops, both ones that people come to Boulder here, as well as companies have me come to them and work with their whole team. I do training. And then these are 4 more resources that are free. One is I send out a newsletter twice a month that you can sign up for. I do a number of blog posts. If you go to my website, there's over 250 different articles. The top right is a search function. If you type in architect, you'll probably find 8 or 10 articles I've written about architects. That's all free. Go get it. In fact, anything that's in my book is probably, you can find it that way too, if you don't want to buy the book. And I've started doing podcasts a couple times a month, if you like to learn that way. And I'm doing these monthly webinars. So I do that. And one of the things that, I'm doing more and more of is where, companies are having me come in and spend a day with their entire team, in which we do some teaching, learning like we've gone through here, but then we spend the rest of the day focused on their initiatives, their efforts, and what changes they can make to be more successful. So I'm doing more and more of that, which gets beyond that single person who wants to change the world and can only change so much. So when we get everybody together, it's much more effective. So I want to thank you for attending. Please, I'd love to connect with you. One, feel free to email me anytime with a question, and I'll get back to you, or maybe we'll have a brief phone call. And connect with me on LinkedIn, sign up for the newsletter, and hopefully I will see you listen to a future webinar. Have a great day.